How will it feel that after thinking your beloved pet was gone forever, he came back? Get a tissue because here are some heartwarming stories of long-lost pets that came back home. Number 11, and I will walk 500 more. The story sets in Australia in 1978. A family going on vacation left their beloved Howie, a pedigree Persian cat, at their grandparents' home 1,000 miles away from theirs. While on vacation, little Howie escaped, and when the family arrived to pick him up, they stayed for a month longer looking for their cat. After their confidence was lost, they returned home heartbroken and with no hope of ever seeing their pet again. Until 1 year later, a filthy, skinny, and quite injured cat showed up at their house. The family did not recognize him until their daughter arrived home from school. After a checkup, it was confirmed that Howie had traveled 1,000 miles in 1 year all the way back home, passing dangerous rivers, deserts, and the wilderness of the Australian outback. If that's not love, well, nothing is. Number 10, better one in hand than 100 flying. This is the story of Nigel the parrot, who was living in California with his owner Darren. Both spoke to one another, and Nigel even adopted the British accent Darren had. One day, when distracted, Nigel was able to fly away into the California skies, never to be seen again. Or so Darren thought. 4 years later, a veterinary office called Darren with the wonderful news that they found Nigel well and ready to go home. On a bizarre turn of events, Nigel had lost his British accent and now spoke Spanish. The finding of Nigel made the local news, and soon the truth about Nigel's new accent was revealed. Nigel had been found and soon after sold in a garage sale to an 86-year-old man named Ruben. Ruben will teach Nigel, now called Morgan, Spanish. The man had lost his wife and was comforted by Morgan's company. When Darren found out about the new bond his parrot had made with the old man, Darren drove now Morgan back to Ruben. Number 9, Putty Tad Go Home. This story happened in Michigan about 5 years ago. One of the volunteers in a rescue called Richland Animal Rescue had a male blue Russian cat for adoption. The team of volunteers worked very hard to place pets in perfect homes, but Putty Tad had different ideas of what perfect was for him. He was fostered for 6 years when he finally was placed in a large and playful home just for him and his new human. 4 days after Putty Tad arrived to his new home in Detroit, he escaped through a small crack in one of the windows that was high up on the wall. A team of volunteers and neighbors walked the city for a couple of days, distributing pamphlets and talking to the people walking by. Only when the foster mom called his name did he run from under a bush to greet her. As you can imagine, he was taken back where he felt was home to him. Number 8, it took you long enough. Picture this, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, 1982. This story took many years to unfold, and this is what happened. A house was being remodeled, and the family had a red-footed tortoise named Manuela. The kids have had the tortoise for a couple of years, and during the remodeling of the house, Manuela went missing. The family speculated that maybe during the construction, the door was left open long enough for this slow Manuela to walk out. Now, let's fast forward 30 years to 2013. Now, with the children fully grown with children of their own, the house was getting ready to be sold. The father had passed away, and while the children were cleaning a particular room that the father had all his treasures, collectibles, and things that he never got fixed, there Manuela was. The father hardly ever opened the door of that particular room and had it under locked key. So for many years, no one went in but until the children were cleaning it up. After finding their lost beloved pet, the veterinarian told them that Manuela will had only survived for 2 to 3 years with no food, if not for the amount of little critters that lived in the room. The floor was full of termites, so Manuela was able to survive with the little morsels. Now Manuela lives happy and safe with her family. Number 7, Faster Than You. This story involves a very resourceful small Jack Russell Terrier dog named Jarvis. One day, in a picturesque Cornish country estate in the English southwestern tip, Jarvis was least seen with his owner running into the bushes, chasing perhaps one of the Cornish hens that inhabited the estate. For a couple of hours, his owner searched to no avail, giving up for the evening as night was falling. As they were heading home, hoping to go back the next day in search for their runaway dog, the owner got a phone call indicating that a dog like Jarvis had been seen taking the ferry they had taken earlier in the day heading back home. Puzzled, the family arrived to find Jarvis had made it home before them and was waiting by the door ready for greetings and, of course, dinner. Number 6, Say My Name. Another small birdie flew from his nest in Tokyo, Japan, and was persecuted by the police until arrested on top of a roof. The parrot must have had his rights read, for he said nothing while in police custody. As soon as he was taken to a veterinarian, Yosuke started spilling all the beans, reciting his name, address, and phone number. While in the process of being reunited with his family, he kept the veterinary staff well entertained with a concert of his favorite songs. Yosuke's family had been teaching him for the last 2 years his personal information in case something like this were to ever happen. Number 5, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now. Imagine being in a tsunami, earthquake, or a hurricane. In Japan, in 2011, there was an earthquake followed by a tsunami that devastated the nation. In this particular incident, an Akita named Shane was separated from his owner during the terrible incident. His owner was warning people of the natural disaster heading their way, but was unable to go back home to Shane, who was in the backyard waiting for his master. When his master did not return back to him, Shane swam through torrents of water, debris, and filth. It took him 6 hours and a serious damage to his paws, but he doggy paddled all the way to the school where his master was taking shelter. And even though he had never been there, he managed to navigate and hone in on his owner to be reunited and together to be stronger during this very tragic time. Number 4, The Call of the West. Here is the story of one of the most famous dogs in U.S. history. In 1923, a dog named Bobby was visiting with his family in Indiana when he got lost. His family searched for him but could not find him anywhere. Finally, the family headed back to Oregon, 2,551 miles back home. The family thought they will never see Bobby again when 6 months later, in their footsteps, there was a starving, filthy, and quite hurt dog who was walking a long way. And it was Bobby. The Humane Society did an investigation to corroborate the story. Books, silent movies, and more have been made inspired by this treacherous adventure through lakes, raging rivers, wilderness, and civilization. Well, the entire nation, east to west. You may also know him by the name of Silverton Bobby or Bobby the Wonder Dog. Parades in Silverton, Oregon are still made in his honor. Number 3, No Kitty Say a Word. The hero in this story is an orange tabby cat named Skittles. In 2002, during a beautiful Labor Day trip to southern Wisconsin, Skittles got lost, and although the family gave him 10 days to get his act together, he never made it. About 5 months later, back home in northern Minnesota, which is 350 miles away from where they last saw Skittles, one of the children brought inside a stray cat. Now, the best part is that there were a couple of other cats who made no fuss when the new intruder arrived. Upon further observation, the family realized that the hungry new member was indeed Skittles. Number 2, Castaway style. On a very stormy day in the seas of Mackay in Australia, an Australian cattle dog named Sophie was thrown overboard by the rough seas while taking a cruise in her owner's yacht. Her family feared Sophie had drowned. The waters are also known for being infested with hammerhead and tiger sharks, both very gorgeous but unfriendly top predators of the Australian waters. Around 5 miles away from where Sophie had been last seen was the island of St. Bees, mainly inhabited by koalas, goats, and no more than a handful of people. 4 months had passed since the terrible incident when in the island there were reports of several dead goats. The culprit was no other than an Australian cattle dog that no one in the island claimed as theirs. The story of the dog reached the ears of the grief-stricken family who had given up on Sophie. Park rangers of the island agreed to bring the dog to meet Sophie's family and see if she was the mysterious goat hunter. When the goat hunter heard her name, whimperings and barks were heard coming from the cage where Sophie was. Finally, Sophie ran so fast to meet her family that she almost knocked them down. 5-mile swim on shark-infested waters, goat hunting, and now house dog. She only needs a ball called Wilson, and we will have a Castaway movie sequel. Number 1, The Army of One. This is the fairy tale of a stubborn or perhaps brave male cat named Gribble. In 1987, he lived very happily as the master of his own domain in France. His owner had the misfortune of losing financial stability and had to give up caring for his beloved pet. Gribble and his new human moved to West Germany when Gribble decided that he wanted to go back to French soil and rule over his previous master's kingdom. Being the brave, or perhaps stubborn cat that he was, he made the trip back home and arrived at his forever master's home 2 years later.